Hello, welcome back. This is Patty Bennett. I am excited to share another video with you showing you ways to use this Petal Passion Designer Series paper from Stampin Up and 4 different coloring mediums so that you can color on this paper and create beautiful projects. You're going to find this paper in the Occasions catalog right down here at the bottom of page 23. It's a little hard to see all of the patterns in the catalog, but I am going to show you here real quickly that 6 of the patterns are a white background with some kind of detailed artwork on them, and then the other 6 patterns have a black background or the black and white stripe, and then those have a white pattern on them. So those would be the 12 patterns in the package. You can see that I have used this pattern to use Stampin Blends to make these cards right here. And let me show you a couple more that I did. I also colored that one and this one. And then this one uses this pattern, but same idea. So I just wanted to go over 4 different ways that you could color in this beautiful Petal Passion paper. So the first way I'm going to share with you is my favorite way to color on this paper, and that would be with the Stampin Blends markers. These are alcohol markers, and when you color with them, you want to protect your work surface and then put your paper down and start your coloring because it will bleed through and you don't want to damage your desktop or anything. Now on this one I used, let's just take this one away for a minute. I didn't use that, but I did use the corals and the yellows and the greens on this one. And very simply, I've done other videos about coloring with the blends, but I just thought I'd show you a couple of tips that I may not have covered in another video. And that is when I do the leaves, I love to add a little yellow to the leaf and then add some green. And if you're at all worried about shading, I know that that's a little intimidating to some people that are starting to color or using alcohol markers or watercolors. This particular paper is wonderful because you can see all of these areas that have kind of a darker gray kind of dot pattern. That is what you're going to follow along for your darker colors. You've already got the shading there. So you saw that I did yellow first. I added some of the light old olive, then the dark in the darker spots. Then I'm going over it with the light old olive. And that gives you some shading and shadows, but gives you a little bit of warmth in that leaf with the yellow. And then simply for your bigger flowers, you don't want to work on the entire thing at once because you do want your marker to be somewhat wet. I like to start with light. I add the darker where they have the shadows. I mean, it's almost cheating because they've got the dark little dots and shading there for you. And then I put the dark on and then I just blend it in with the lighter shade. And this can be any shade. I just happen to love the Calypso Coral. So then when you get it done, you're going to get something that looks like this with the Calypso Coral flower and the green leaf. So you can see that I have backed this one on one of the dark patterns. Grab that one. So that would be this one in the background. And so it would be behind that. I loved that dark and light contrast there. Now, one thing I want to talk about are these 2 cards, and you can see I've used basically this same paper pattern, but look at the background. So look at the difference between these 3 cards. This one has a blue background, this one has a tan background, and this one I left white. So what I did was I used the light crumb cake marker for the background of this one, and for this one I used the light pool party marker, and I just love that beautiful contrast of a color instead of the white. So that is totally an option. And since these markers color so beautifully and blend so easily, you don't even have to worry about stroke marks or lines or lights and darks. You just start coloring in wherever there is a background area. And when this dries, which is just like not even minutes, that whole background is going to just beautifully be this light blue color. So that is an option for you when you are using the Stampin' Blends, is to leave your background white or to color it in with a different color. Okay, so let's move on to option number 2 for coloring the Petal Passion paper. For option number 2, it's another idea with the Stampin' Blend markers, but let me show you how fun this is. You don't even have to stay within the lines. I'm just coloring right over the white area. Yes, it's getting a little bit onto the black, but when this dries, that's not going to show. And you are going to have such a fun background of green leaves on a black piece of paper, which normally you wouldn't be able to create that just with stamps unless you were doing some heat embossing. Similarly, look how cute this would be if you took a marker and you just started coloring in some of the flowers. And you don't have to color in every one. That kind of defeats the purpose of using a background paper. But I think what would be cute is to just do them in groups of 3 here and there on the paper. So that way you have kind of a cute pattern going on like that, and you get some color on your paper, but you don't have to color the whole thing. You could color the whole thing, by all means, you certainly could. If you wanted to do something even a little bit different and quicker, you could also take your ink pad and your sponge dauber. So then this would be method number 3, and you could just start adding color this way. I kind of like, so as I started, it was darker, which is always going to happen when you start using a sponge on something. So it was darker, and then as I was working and the ink was getting used up, it got lighter. So we'll start darker, more intense, and then as we work the ink off of there, it got lighter and lighter, and so you have some really fun lights and darks. Or you could go in and just make sure that everything is more kind of equally colored. But that's going to be another fun option for coloring in this paper. So now let's look at another way you could color in. So next I have my Stampin Spritzer, and I have filled it with rubbing alcohol and some lemon lime twist re-inker, and I shook it up, and I'm going to spritz on this paper to color these leaves in with the lemon lime twist. Now this, you definitely want to protect your background, because the spray sometimes, sprays like in a cone direction, and it could kind of get where you don't want it to be. So you just have to make sure that you aim. But look how cute that is and how quick that would be to color in your whole piece. I love this. And if you sprayed heavier at one end and let it just sort of mist towards the other, you'd get an ombre or a gradient effect. So that is a super quick way to color in. And if you haven't seen my other videos with this tip, this is just a hair color applicator bottle, and I have rubbing alcohol in one and water in the other, and it is just such a nice, easy way to fill either your aqua painter or your spritzer very quickly. And the reason I'm using the rubbing alcohol on this is because it dries quicker, and you don't have to worry about letting your paper dry for, hours or whatever, and it just dries pretty quickly with the rubbing alcohol. Okay, so now we have one more way to try. Okay, so the last method I'm going to share with you involves an ink pad and a sponge brayer, and I have selected the polka dot pattern, and I just want to make sure that I get quite a bit of ink on here. And I'm going to go for sort of an ombre effect. So what I'm going to do is put the most coverage of ink down towards one end, and then as I go towards the other end, I'm just going to let the ink fade off of my sponge. So let's do that just one more time so that we get even more of a contrast. So we have our darker end here, and I'm just going to go right up the page. And again, I'm protecting my work surface because we have extra ink happening. So then you have this really cool ombre effect. And again, you could come from the other end and you could just fill it in and it could be solid, but I thought that was kind of a fun look. So quick review, we colored with the Stampin Blends onto the large pattern and you can create cards like this. And then remember, we also tried coloring in the background. So that's an option on these two that have the colored background. We used either a Stampin' Blend or an ink pad with the sponge dauber to randomly or fully color in. We used a Stampin' Blend on the black paper. We used the sponge brayer and an ink pad to do an ombre effect, or we used the spritzer for the all over coverage. So, easy, fun ways to use this beautiful Petal Passion paper and create great cards. If you enjoyed these ideas, I hope that you will visit me at pattystamps.com for daily stamping inspiration and all your shopping needs at mystamporder.com. Thanks so much for watching. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed these tips. Thanks again. See you next time.